Hello everybody and welcome to the Money Man. Now today I'm going to talk about arguably one of the most beautiful sets of currency that comes from any European country. I'm going to show you a nearly complete set of Czech Republic Korun notes, and I think these are absolutely amazing because they're full of history. So before I begin this video, I want to give a big shout out to my good friend Cosmin, who supplied me with these banknotes. Thank you so much, Cosmin. You've provided an excellent set here. So what I'll do is I'll show you the banknotes and I'll go into some of the history of the imagery that you can find on them, and these are really interesting banknotes. So let's start off with the lowest denomination I have, which is the 100 Korun banknote, and here it is. Now there are many reasons why I love this banknote. I love the design, the artistic design. I love the colour scheme actually. It's not too bold, but it's very interesting. But I love the character on the front. Now this here is Charles VI, and he is an absolutely fascinating character. He was the King of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Empire, and his Czech lineage comes from his mother. His mother was Queen Elizabeth of Bohemia, and she was actually the daughter of a very rich elite family based in Prague. So that's where Charles VI gets his lineage, his Czech lineage from. And he was the eldest son and heir of King John of Bohemia. And interestingly enough, John of Bohemia was actually killed at the Battle of Crecy on the 26th of August 1346. And if you know anything about Crecy, Crecy was a great victory of the English over the French during the 100 Years' War. So I was really surprised to find out how the history of my own country was tied up with the history of the Czech Republic. Obviously it wasn't the Czech Republic at the time, but I guess, or I should say, my own English history is tied up with Czech history. So I found that really fascinating. And Charles VI was actually literate in 5 languages. He was literate in French, German, Italian, Latin and Czech. And that would make sense given that the Holy Roman Empire was the largest empire that dominated Central Europe. It covered, modern day France, Germany, northern Italy, Switzerland, all these countries, obviously that weren't countries at the time, but historically their territory was part of the Holy Roman Empire. So it's to be expected that he was literate in at least 2 or 3 languages, but 5 is very impressive. And Charles VI's reign is often regarded as a golden age of Bohemia. His diplomatic prowess and dedication to reform ushered in a period of stability for the Holy Roman Empire. So he is rightly regarded as a great monarch. Now, if we look at the watermark, you can see it's Charles himself, and you can see we've got that round orb with crucifix on top, and we've got the denomination of 100 right there. So that represents the Christian heritage of the Czech Republic. So if we spin the note around and look at the reverse is really fantastic as well. I love this. Now what you've got here is a very interesting seal. Now this is the seal of Charles University in Prague, and this university was actually founded in 1348, and it was the first university in Central Europe. And on the coat of arms you can actually see, now you might think that Charles is on the right, but he's not. He's actually on the left, and what he's doing is he's actually bowing to this patron saint. Now this patron saint, I believe, is Wenceslaus. So he's actually bowing to Saint Wenceslaus right here, and you can see that we've got the sigils of Bohemia and the other one, which is the King of the Romans. So I believe this one is the sigil of the King of the Romans, and this is the one for Bohemia, because we've got the Imperial Eagle of Rome and then the Lion of Bohemia, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm mistaken there, but from my history I believe that the Bohemians used a lion as their sigil, and I know the Romans used an eagle. So yeah, so that's what you have on the back of the note. So really interesting, fascinating banknote. I really love this one. I think this is probably my favourite actually in terms of the imagery on it. And you can see we've got wonderful patterns. You can see we've got these sort of sigil of the Czech Republic right here. You know, many of you have probably seen that before. I believe on historical iterations of the Czech flag, they have actually had this coat of arms on it in the past, but not anymore. So yeah, really, really nice. And I always wonder what these are in the corner. If anybody knows what these letters are, what they mean, I'd be really interested to know, because each banknote has a sort of like a different letter. I mean, it could be K for Korun, but I'm really not sure. So yeah, so that's the first one. So let's have a look at the next one, which is the 200. And the 200 Korun is a really nice banknote as well. So if we have a look here, here it is. Now, many of you have probably seen this banknote. It seems to be quite easily available in the collecting community. And the gentleman on the front here is a man called John Amos Comenius. I'm probably saying that really badly. We'll go with Comenius. And he was a Czech philosopher, pedagogue and theologian. And he's actually considered the father of modern education. And he was way ahead of his time, because he actually advocated universal education. And he famously published this idea in his book, which is called the Didactia Magna. Oh, I'm stumbling over all these pronunciations here. Didactia Magna. That was his book that he basically wrote and published. And yeah, he championed many things, but probably the most notable thing was universal education. And one of his innovations was that he introduced a pictorial textbook written in native languages instead of Latin. And this is really revolutionary, because you've got to remember at this time, you know, whilst he was alive, the church still had a monopoly on education, and pretty much all the educational books were done in Latin. But obviously common people didn't speak Latin, they spoke their own regional language. And John Amos was basically saying, you know, let's educate people in their own local languages. I mean, this was one of the reasons why people in England were not literate for so long, because the church had such a stranglehold on education because of their literacy in Latin, whereas the common people didn't have that literacy in Latin. So he was pretty much an educational revolutionary for his time. Really, really fascinating guy. So let's spin it around and look at the back. Now the reverse is really fascinating as well, because what you've got here is something called the Orbis Pictus. And this was a textbook that was actually written for children by John Amos himself. And you can actually see it says Orbis Pictus. And the interesting thing about this is this book was translated into German from Latin, and then it was translated into other languages. And basically this book became the defining children's textbook across Central Europe for centuries after it was written. And you can see we've got a lovely picture of a book here representing that literary innovation. So this guy was an incredible man. Fascinating as well. So there we go. So that's the 200. Now the next one I have is the 500. And yes, I'm going to stumble over some more pronunciation now, because it's going to get harder and harder for me. So here's the 500 Korun note, which is a really nice banknote as well. And on the front of this, we have this beautiful rose in the middle, which really brings some nice vibrancy to the banknote. And we've got this lady on the right here. And this is Buzina Nemcova. And she was a Czech writer during the final phase of the Czech national revival movement. And during the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a great effort to revive Czech culture, language and identity. Because basically, during that time, what is now known as the Czech Republic was dominated by the Habsburg Empire, and I imagine that German was starting to supersede a lot of Czech culture, Czech language, and there was sort of like a movement from, you know, the Czech people to actually restore their culture, their identity and their language, and this went on for quite a long time. She was married actually as well to a guy called Josef Němec at the age of 17. And he was 15 years older than her, so quite interesting. And like I said, she was a writer, and her most notable works are two books called The Grandma, which is her most famous book, and another one called The Village Under the Mountains, which are still available today for people to buy and read. So yeah, very, very interesting lady. Now, if we spin it around and look at the back, what we have here is a wonderful image. Now, at first, I thought this was Gaia, which kind of confused me because Gaia is very much a pagan figure, but it's not actually. It's a laureate woman that symbolises all the female characters in Nemcova's books. So really, really interesting. But I love how, this woman's face is surrounded by nature. She looks like some kind of, deity of nature, hence why I thought Gaia. But really, really fascinating. I love the reverse of this banknote. Wonderful design. Really, really cool. And again, we've got this strange image here, which looks like it's got a letter in it. I'm not sure if it does, but I think it's supposed to be a rose, which again is featured right on the front. So really, really nice banknote. And I forgot to mention, actually, something I forgot to show you on the 200. Let's jump back a little bit. You can see that we've got John Amos there. In the watermark. So the watermarks do change depending on the denomination, and if we look at the 500, you can see just right there we've got Nemcova right there. So yeah, really, really nice banknotes. So the highest denomination I have, it's not the highest denomination in the series, but it's the highest one I have, unfortunately, but it's really cool nonetheless, is the 1000 Korun note, and here it is. Now, I love the colour scheme of this. It's a really beautiful banknote. And again, there's loads of fantastic history going on here. Now, this gentleman on the front is actually called Frantisek, I can't remember, Frantisek Polanski? I'm really sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. I think I did, but we'll go with Polanski. I'm just gonna keep saying that. So he was a Czech historian and politician, and he was very influential during the Czech national revival, which I spoke about previously. And he's considered one of the three fathers of the nation, which is quite interesting. Charles VI being another one, and he was probably the most prominent historian of Bohemia. Even to this day, actually, it's widely accepted that his history of Bohemia is the most comprehensive ever put together. Even contemporary historians appreciate this fact. And the interesting thing about this gentleman is that he advocated for a Czech kingdom which would have incorporated Bohemia, Moravia and Silesia. So very much a Czech nationalist. I mean, that word nationalist gets a bad reputation these days, unfairly, I think so. But he was a patriot in many ways. So really, really beautiful. And interestingly, you've got this tree here. Now, I looked into the symbolism of this, and I couldn't really find any answers as to what's going on, because if you look at it, it's uprooted. Now, I think that's supposed to be symbolic of Czech culture during the time of the national revival. Okay, because if you think, there are many sort of like popular sayings that talk about, an uprooted tree, it has no grip on the ground, and therefore, it can't flourish, it can't thrive. So I'm wondering if this is some kind of like metaphor for Czech culture at the time. It was like an uprooted tree, and they were trying to root it again and get it in the ground. Just an idea on my part, I'm not sure, but if anybody knows what the significance of this uprooted tree is, I'd really like to know in the comment section. It would really, really help out. So let's have a look at the watermark. And there we go. So you can see Polanski right there, and with the 1000. So very, very nice. So let's turn it around and look at the reverse. Now, I really love this. This is gorgeous. Now, what you've got here is an eagle spreading its wings over the Archbishop's castle at Cromeres? The pronunciation is so bad, I know it. It just sounds wrong when I'm saying it. But this is the building right here. And the building has very strong historical ties to a series of revolutions that took place in the Austrian Empire from 1848 to 1849. I won't go into too much detail about those because it's long and complicated. But yeah, again, we've got another historical figure. But again, to me, this represents the sort of, Czech national identity sort of bursting out of history. So really, really fascinating. Very, very nice banknotes. And we've got that seal right there again. And this time we've got P. If it is a P, I think it's supposed to be a P. Again, if anybody knows what's going on here, I would love to find out. Now, the next thing I'm going to do in another video is put these under UV light and see what's going on. But I'll save that for later because I don't want to keep recycling the same content over and over again. So, bit of a rambling video, so much to cover. I'm really sorry for the terrible pronunciation of some of the stuff, but yeah, that's what I've got for you today. Let me know what you think about these incredible banknotes. And Cosmin, if you're listening, if you can get the other denominations for me, I'll be so, so, so happy. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope you're safe and well, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. It's the Money Man, signing out for now. Bye-bye.